So that brings us to item 9 on our agenda, which is the superintendent's report. Dr. Ross, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board and our community. We want to thank you so much for honoring our students. We want to thank their parents. We know a lot of those, especially at the elementary level, when you're doing those science fair projects, somebody has to run to Lowe's or run to this place or that place to go get those students the materials they need. And we want to thank our parents as well. And a special thank you, as Ms. Huddle says, one of the stories of inspiration. And sometimes on our caseloads, we don't know who we inspire to do what. Mine go back to a third grade teacher. I think we all have that one teacher, or maybe two teachers, that have done so much in our lives to inspire us. That's the power of a teacher. This week, May 8th through 12th, we paused for Teacher Appreciation Week. On the screen, you see a heart of words. This came from our student advisory of when they thought about teachers that have made an impact on them. We say that in education it's the heart work. So we thank our teachers, our staff, for all of the work that they do in the lives of our children. We, as always, are guided by a system moving on 3 questions. Why did we do this work? Our vision. How do we accomplish our why, our mission? And then our strategic plan, our passion, is what we create. And so our vision is that we love and grow our students. Our mission is that we stay focused on academic, social, and emotional growth and development. And then our outcomes, is that every student feels loved in our school, which is measured by our school climate goals and our teacher administrative quality goals, and that every student has demonstrated academic growth in our schools, which is measured by our student achievement goals and our gifted and talented strategies. Our job throughout the year is to stay focused on that growth and development. And I commit to continue to put in front of you our growth and development. And one of the things that we are looking at during Teacher Appreciation Week is we're getting ready for testing. And SE Ready, SE Pass, and the EOCEP, these are all exams according with AP. We do a lot of testing in May, and we have by proviso responsible for taking assessments throughout the year, fall, winter, and spring. And so we track how many students are on level and off level. You see the fall projections, the winter, as well as the spring. And what I wanted to continue to show for our teachers is you look at these spring projections and you say, well, there's a lot of students in those red bars who are not on grade level. I want to dive deeper into what's going on in those red bars. We cannot assume that every student that hits the 3rd grade is at a 3rd grade level. We have a lot of students who come to us and they're more than a year of academic learning from the year that they're in. And so we measure something called median student growth percentiles. Our goal, members of the community, is to have 55 and above in math and 56 in reading by 2027. If you look at this chart, which outlines our growth, meaning that you can have a student who comes in the 3rd grade at a kindergarten level, but if we grow that student to 2nd grade, we've done tremendous growth. They still are not going to hit that statewide mark, but that teacher has done an amazing job with that student. We have to celebrate that, even though it doesn't show up on a report card. What does median growth percentile show us? It shows us that our teachers at elementary ELA, when our target is in the 50s, they have 60. When our target for math is in 55, they're at 71. We're doing tremendous in the growth of our students. While we see growth even in our secondary, 6 through 8. So we're very proud of the work that our teachers are doing. I have tremendous optimism of the growth that we'll see. We put out a video this weekend just showing that a lot of students, sometimes when testing comes, there's some anxiety about testing. And so parents, we want you to be aware that in our student services department, We've made from our mental health staff, we've made resources available for families. But at the end of the day, they're prepared, they're ready. So if they get the rest and do their best, we will fare well. On the secondary level, we're tracking graduation rate, making sure that that 9GR hits that 4 years after they enter that ninth grade, that they are walking across the stage prepared for their futures. We put asterisks after March 16th when we used the computer program to measure students who are on track versus looking at the committee triage teams. And while this number does look daunting to overcome, my team has assured me that we'll see exponential growth in this. One of the things that we look at is over 160-something students who are in jeopardy because of attendance. If you remember with COVID, there was we got rid of seat time, or there was a stay on seat time. Now that's back in. And so we're expecting students to meet their 120 hours for their full Carnegie credit, and we're going to be offering recapture on that. So I look forward to reporting that on our May 22nd meeting. In addition to that, it's not only that they are graduating on time, but that they are college and career ready. We are excited that we have seen the number of students who are neither college or career ready fall as the year went through, and we showed this progress. Now we want to show how this number is falling, some of the things that we're doing. So I'm going to ask our Chief of Academics and Administration, Ms. Anna Miller, to come forth and talk about some of the things that we're doing in District 5 for college and career readiness. Ms. Miller.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ross. Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Ross, we're excited to be here tonight to give you a report on our college and career readiness. Before I introduce and turn it over, I want to take just a moment of privilege to say Happy Teacher Appreciation Week to the wonderful teachers. Ms. Huddle, like you, my three children had the most fabulous teachers you could ever have every single year that they were in school in District 5. And my daughter, too, had Miss Taylor at Chapin High School, and she was not the strongest in math. She really, really lived out that I don't have it yet. I don't get it yet. But because she had Miss Taylor, and Miss Taylor's love for science and chemistry was so infectious, she chose to take AP Chemistry her senior year when it was not a credit that she needed. So our teachers are absolutely fabulous. We also have some more fabulous people here tonight to talk with you about our CCR. And so at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our Director of Career and Technical Education, David Prigge, and our Coordinator of Career and Technical Education, Ms. Charity Simmons. And I want to say a big thank you to Ms. Nashunda Walters, our Director of Secondary, who also helped with the presentation tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Thank you, Dr. Ross. Madam Chair, Board of Trustees, thank you tonight for providing me this opportunity to briefly share some updates with our college and career readiness data, and also making sure that we are implementing opportunities for our students to be prepared to transition into a post-secondary life. So I wanted to give you guys an update on our college and career readiness indicators. You will often hear Dr. Ross mention outcomes as it relates to what we do in D5 and here, and understanding where the rubber meets the road, and also making sure that our graduates are equipped with world-class knowledge, skills, and characteristics as defined by the profile of the South Carolina graduate. As a reminder, there are a number of ways that students can become college and career ready, and also our schools are working diligently to make sure that our students are prepared for these college assessments, and also creating meaningful opportunities through work-based learning to make sure that they are meeting these indicators upon graduation. So I wanted to also focus on the criteria for work-based learning and also share some highlights with you for as our work-based learning opportunities. We have students working in various industries and prominent businesses, sites throughout Columbia, which include Lexington Medical Center, Blanchard Machinery, Steve Pageant. These are just to name a few, but our students have the opportunity to actually go out into the industry and actually get experience, and also these jobs align with their career pathway. In March of this year, we administered the WIN testing to all of our juniors and seniors who had not previously met the criteria for meeting a silver or higher. Because the state made a decision late on regarding the career assessment, schools weren't able to prepare our students as we have done in time past with making sure that they had the software and access in time past as school districts have done. But our school district leaders have assured us that our students are going to perform well on this assessment. When looking at our college and career readiness data and breaking that down, as a CTE department, we closely monitor each school individual's progress to make sure that our seniors in our graduating cohort are either college or career ready. Also, we look at this information as it is entered into our PowerSchool databases, and also monitoring with the State Department send us updates concerning college and career readiness. And so this is a progression of an ongoing data reporting measure that we look at throughout the school year. So just to give you an overview of our projecting data, when you guys will see some changes within our numbers as it relates to college and career readiness, I just want to point out that this extends way beyond the academic school year, because as you guys already know, ACT and SAT testing, that is an ongoing data reporting process. Also, IB testing and AP testing, students are testing right now. We will not receive those scores back until June. Also, dual enrollment, those scores will be in the summer. Also, with work-based learning, these are things that we are monitoring as well, but that's data that is inputted into PowerSchool and is an ongoing process. So just know that these are things that we are constantly monitoring, and so you will see changes as the data is reported. I wanted to also give you guys an update on our First Jobs initiative. In an effort to expand our work-based learning opportunities, we expanded our First Job initiative throughout all four of our high schools in our district. In February, we had a First Job celebration for our students who were employed as student workers here in our district. And so these were students had the opportunity to come and meet with Dr. Ross, members of the board as well, and sign a certificate indicating that they are our district employee. And also we had this signing day to celebrate this opportunity for students to go into the career and be celebrated as district office employees. Currently, we have 9 students across our district who are employed with First Jobs. We're looking to expand that First Jobs initiative to our technology, information technology aides, and also bus drivers aides, and so we look to expand that. So just know that we are looking at expanding that program, and we're looking forward to more students being a part of that program. I'm now going to turn the rest of this presentation over to Mr. David Prigge, our Director of Career and Technical Education.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Great job with the presentation. Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Ross, Ms. Miller. Oh, there she is. I just wanted to take a few minutes and talk about our federal Carl Perkins Act that we have actually 7 performance indicators that we have to meet on an annual basis, and we have the 3 on the screen that pertain to work-based learning, certifications, and the items that are career ready. Now, if you look on the first one, the 3S1 post program placement, Every year, 10 months after a student completes a CTE program, we do a follow-up to see if they're either on the job in that area, post-secondary education, or in the military. And as you can see about the top row, you would divide the numerator by the denominator, and that gives us our performance for this indicator. And the SDPL, that is the State Department performance level, which we have to meet. And when I say we have to meet it, we have to meet 90% of that level in order to say, yes, we met, and we're good to go, and we don't have to do an improvement plan. So you can see there on the first one, we are at 99.2%, so we're way above the state performance determined level. Then the second one, the 4S1, is non-traditional program enrollment. That is having males in dominantly female professions or females in dominantly male professions. So the numerator divided by the denominator, our performance was 28.5%. The state determined performance level is 12.1, and we had to have at least a 10.9, and as you can see, we're way past that. We're exceeding our standards. Then the last one on the screen is the 5S1, attained recognized post-secondary credential. That could be anything from OSHA 10 to a welding certificate, whatever is on the Education Oversight Committee list from the State Department of Education. Now the numerator divided by the denominator, our performance is 90.8. The state performance level is 35.5, and the 90% would have been 32, and we have just about tripled that standard, and of course we met it with more than 90%. So I think that's the end of our, that is the end of our presentation. We're doing very well. We're exceeding in a lot of areas. And as Ms. Simmons mentioned, the first jobs, that's a good start. And our theory is, if we won't hire them within the district, why would we expect industry outside the district to hire them? So this is a great initiative Dr. Ross started a year ago, and we have adopted it and taken off with that. And these students, those 9 students, are doing outstanding on the job, and it'll help them for their career ready because it's work-based learning in their career path. Thank you all so much.
We'll stand for any questions.
Are there any questions about the strategic planning and college career ready?
Mr. Satterfield.
Because I can't work the buttons very well. Do you have any idea what percentage of our students take the ACT and those that take the SAT? The reason I ask that question is, when I was principal, and Dr. Ross will remember this, College Board changed their reporting of SAT scores. And a lot of the principals, we went to a lot of meetings to discuss this. But for those of you that don't know this, very few states measure or even give the SAT. The ACT is the more common test that they give for college readiness. And the reason is because it's closer and closer to the type of test that students take normally in high school. And they usually fare better on it. For some reason, our state uses the SAT as a measuring stick for success. It's not a fair measuring stick for success, but we have, for some reason, been doing that for many years. But I remember years ago going to some meetings because they changed the way that SAT scores were reported. In other words, it used to be schools, the reporting to the schools was the last SAT test that the students took. And that would be in your data. I'm not sure, is that still how it is?
Are you saying the last SAT?
In other words, students can take the SAT multiple times.
Correct.
But the last one they took is the score. Are those the scores that the school receives?
Yeah. We believe it's the highest now.
It's the highest?
I know that's what they can use for colleges and
Yeah,
universities.
here's my question, or I don't say my question, just a commentary so folks understand this. At that time, there was a change on how they were reported. If students took the verbal and they took the math, if they scored real well on the math, well, then the students could report that to the college that they were applying to. They could go back and retake the test, and if they scored really well on the math, they just worked on the verbal and they did Christmas trees on the math. Unfortunately, that was the test. Those were the scores that were reported because it was the last test taken. And unfortunately, when things were posted in the newspaper, those were the reports that we got. How did South Carolina stack up with SAT scores? I remember that when Dr. Ross and I worked at Chapin, we put in an SAT camp and workshops, and we increased them by our SAT scores by 35 points across the board. That's pretty good. The number one state in the nation was Michigan, and they had 11% of their students that took the SAT. So that's just when you're given the data, sometimes it's an unfair way of measuring or looking at your successes because of the way the data is reported or used. And I just wanted to share that. That's all.
Ms. Huddle?
I had a question for Mr. Prigge. A while back, we were given, numbers of students that were enrolled specifically at the Kate Center, and some of them it was less than I would have expected for a school that size. So I was wondering, do you think we have room to increase enrollment? And if so, what are some of the things that you guys are doing to achieve that?
Yes, ma'am. One of the things that we're doing, we've reenacted the 8th grade tours here at the center. Because of COVID, back then we couldn't do it, so we saw a decline. But the numbers are on the uptake. We're increasing this year. I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head right now, but I've been looking at that for the last couple of weeks because we're already projecting 23-24, and there is an increase in 23-24 from 22-23. I don't know what, yeah, because we realigned the completer pathways also throughout the district. And school counselors, not guidance, they understand now more what the pathways are and what's required, because we have pathways that require 3 units to be a completer, some require 4 units. And then even cosmetology requires 8 units. So, but we're addressing that, and we have realigned things in the Master Course Catalog, and we're working on it again this summer to make sure we're increasing here at the center. Our goal is to have 80 to 85% capacity at the center.
Speaking to Ms. Huddle's question, with all of the different programs that you have at the center, are there waiting lists for any of those programs? Or if a student wishes to enroll, is there typically an issue with them getting into that program of choice?
With some of the programs, yes, ma'am. We have, like off the top of my head, automotive, we have 118 requesting automotive technology. And we can, throughout the year, do a maximum of 98.
Okay, and what is that criteria? Like, is it a GPA? Is it the date of when you submitted an application? Like, what's the criteria, whether or not you're, I saw that one of these.
Yeah, it goes along with their individual graduation plan.
Okay.
Some of them that we get requests for, it's all projected right now. But we go back and look at their individual graduation plan for each student. If automotive or transportation, distribution, logistic is not on their plan, that's where we go back to school council and saying, this individual doesn't have it on their IGP, so the individuals that have it on their IGP, they'll get first choice.
And are there additional programs that are requested that we don't offer?
Yes, ma'am. We have industry partners that request different programs all the time, and some of the students are talking about different programs that they're more interested in that we could bring into the center, especially
give
if
me
we
an
had
example?
more room. If we have space, we can do a lot more.
Do you have an example of one that maybe that we just?
I've had an industry request from numerous counties in the Midlands for waste and water treatment training. Matter of fact, I just got told that again Friday when we were at the School to Hired event that MEBA put on. And another one is more in the heavy equipment operators, because all the road construction that's going on in the state. We have, I think it's Archer United, who's been emailing me about once every other week, asking if we can do that. Another one is HVAC. So,
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you guys so much.
thank y'all.
Thank you, and we certainly appreciate the work that we're doing to prepare our students for their future, which is different from our past. And I can tell you one of the things that, if you know Chapin High School, you know a gentleman named W.F. Sullivan, and he was really big on our SAT scores and our SAT camps. And one of the pieces in those competitions, they would say, is we would test a large percentage of the Chapin students in our district would test a large percentage of our district students. But when you compare it to states that test a small, it doesn't give apples to apples. Now with college readiness, there's multiple different factors now, from AP, ACT, SAT, all of that plays into the part of being college ready, and that kind of leveled the scales a little bit in terms of apples to apples comparison, giving students multiple pathways to that designation of college ready. Speaking of our students, I wanted to report our student advisory. They wanted to report out to you. They had their last meeting this month, and so they started off the year, and in that, as they started out, they talked about three things: practices that they wanted to see started in the district, practices they wanted to see stopped in the district, and practices that they wanted to continue. So I'll go from the bottom. Our students wanted us to continue the safety precautions. They were aware of the hard work that you as a board have done to make safety changes in their schools. They are aware of the open gates. They're aware of the additional safety security staff that we've added. They're aware of the vestibules that are the airlock, the door locks that we're putting, the alarms, the camera systems. And so I want you to know from our student advisory, they were very appreciative of those safety precautions that this board and district have taken. In terms of practices that they wanted to stop, this is the collective advisory that says stop teaching through packets. I think kind of there are a lot of as we came out of the COVID era, I think, sending a lot of packet information home was something that they said they wanted to have more of that active engagement. And I say as students are coming back into school, they're getting more of that. Small group learning that we are seeing, implementing the Western Kishnik ideals in the classroom. So we're really excited about the work being done there. And then in terms of things that they wanted to start in our district, they wanted mental health days. I said we still have to go to school every day, but I understand the notion of the mental health day, so we appreciate the early releases that we do in our district and the staff development days. But one thing I was really excited about was their district-wide student government event. Now they're planning a 2 years there. This is kind of a 2-year plan to bring an activity to the district for our student governments, but Ms. Taylor and Ms. Miller did something for them this year where the high schoolers visited all of the high schools, including the center. And it gave them an opportunity to come together as one district. But together, they're planning an event called Before You Go, You Need to Know. This is a life skills inventory. And we're going to be looking for volunteers. Maybe you want to do a session, but after testing next May, there will be a circuit that goes around to all of the schools. And it's before you go, you need to know. These are just things that we want all of our people in our community to know, and we'll be looking for volunteers to do sessions for seniors, sponsors, and once they finish the life skills inventory, they can get something from one of our local vendors. But I'm not going to read all of these things, but how to do laundry, shop for groceries, cook, swim, fix a car, maintain a house. There's a lot of different things here. So I'm going to quiz you all, but this is adult learning, so you don't have to write it down. But the question is, what did they rank as the number one session that they wanted in their life skills inventory? And there was actually a tie, a three-way tie. And so for ranked number one session that they would like to see in their Before You Go, so before they graduate, there's a session for this, and is how to manage money. So who's signing up for that? Okay, Ms. Huddle's going to teach that one there. Okay, oh, she's going to go. And then the next one is how to find a job. So they're going to manage the money first, then find a job. And then number three was how to prepare for college and career, what we're hearing about today. Ranked number two was how to manage time, how to communicate other than text, how to advocate for yourself. And it's a funny story. I thought I skipped a hand, and a young lady raised her hand and said, you missed my hand being raised. And I said, I'm sorry, what do you want to prioritize? She said, how to advocate for myself. I said, well, you were on the way. So that was that's also a tie. And then I thought very, kind of the sign of the times, they said how to cope with failure. These are very interesting sessions from the students. In third place was how to stay organized, and the outright fourth place was how to administer basic first aid. So there were things on the list that I thought that would have jumped up, the how to do laundry, how to change a tire, battery, things like that. And they all said, and Dr. Harris can attest, that we can look that up on YouTube. These are things that we can't look up on YouTube, or one of them said, well, I'll just ask my dad how to do these things. So it was very interesting what they would go to. But they said, Dr. Ross, Dr. Harris, and Ms. Miller, Ms. Taylor, there's some things that you don't have on here that we want to know. This survey came from weareteachers.com, March 14th, 2023. But there's some items on here that we want to see that were not on the list. And so that was credit, loans. Tell me about taxes and debt, caring for pets, insurance, investing, and living with and caring for others. So we're planning for this to be May 2024, a life skills survey that goes around to the different schools, all of the high schools. And before they go, our community will invest in pouring into them some life lessons for them, and this will be their group project. So they wanted us to report out to you for support of their program, and we're very proud of our student advisory for their work. In speaking with then we have been doing some polling of a question that has come before this board, or a few questions that have come before this board. And we asked our student advisory to weigh in, we asked our parent advisory to weigh in, and we're asking our teachers through a survey, our teachers and staff. So we received the answers from our students and our principals and our parent advisory. And I'm going to ask Ms. Miller if you remember the results here to help me if I get those wrong. But it was about technology and education. And you think about those life skills inventory, what their shifts. They said we will just YouTube that or Google that. And so as we are making shifts in our work, technology and education, there were some questions that came out, and we asked, just in general, do you agree, disagree, or are you unsure about the following? And the first one was, there were 3 questions or 3 statements. Students will perform better academically, and student behavior would improve if cell phones were not allowed during the day. Now, when it came to the students, they disagreed with this 100%. But the administrators and the parents, they were the total opposite of this. When we talked about enforcement, that's where we had a lot of discussion from both. Number 2, screen time would be reduced. Screen time should be reduced in District 5 classrooms. And I think we had all areas agree with that one. And then number 3, the use of cell phones and Chromebooks in our schools leads to social isolation. And we had a lot of discussion, but did not land on a definite yes, no. So we look forward to hearing the teacher's standpoint on this from when we get those results in. But what's interesting as we talk about technology and education, there are changes that hit us. And I showed our students this, I showed our teachers this. Our students had not a clue what we were looking at. Some of our teachers, to be honest with you, didn't know everything we're looking at. So I gave them a prize if they can identify all 6 of these items. But believe it or not, young people, these used to be in our schools. This was top of the line technology. My favorite, the mimeograph machine. That's right. Everybody would smell their tests. You would smell your test before you took it because all over the nation it came in one ink color. It was the purple or whatever, that never came out. You needed an engineering degree to be able to load the projector. We always knew the future engineers because they could fix the projector there. But think about it, card catalogs. Our students don't. Those are what we would call relics, but the Dewey Decimal System, finding things in stacks. The 3.5 discs were the rage when the floppy disks came out. We still have chalkboards in our building, so I'm not going to say that's gone, but I can attest that there are students that don't know what a VHS is. And they will put DVDs in old VHS pieces. So, but there will be a time when you'll have on this list Google. There'll be a time when our students will say, "Remember we used to Google things?" And Guy Kawasaki talked about the 4 stages of innovation. That he calls it curve jumping. That successful organizations know how to jump to the next curve, and they don't die out because everything goes through these 4 stages. It's inception, the growth, the maturity, and then the decline. And when we think about education, we think about technology, we want to make sure that we're able to jump to the next innovation curve, but jump responsibly. And so I wanted to make our board aware of a new technology. It's called ChatGPT, and this has been out of about 6 months, so it's not new. The development of this is going on for quite some time. But this is artificial intelligence, and I remember the first one, I think we were talking about this weekend, where it would help me with spelling. And I would just start the word, and it would say, "Did you mean this?" I say, "That's exactly what I meant." And it would help me with spelling. But phonetic awareness, I should have knew as a base. But we remember the introduction of that. Our children don't know a world without it. Well, this technology, which is called Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3, or ChatGPT 3 technology, uses AI. It can write a song, it can tell a story, it can write lesson plans. and it can even do your homework. Original work that comes from this AI. Where we were thinking about cutting and pasting or copying and pasting, this creates new work. There are a few chat boxes out there. OpenAI has the Chat GPT. There is one from Google, I think named Bard, and I think Elon Musk, they're developing one. And so I believe that when we think about age of technology, this is something that's really going to change not only education, but almost every field of work. And as we start preparing our students for the field of work, we need to think about jumping to the next curve of innovation. In 2001, Benjamin Bloom's taxonomy was revised by Dr. Laurie Anderson. And at the top, she put create as that highest form of cognitive ability. I believe it's time to go back to the original Bloom's, the 1956 version, because at the top of, and he published 3 taxonomies. A taxonomy is an organization of information, but one on the intellectual, he put one on the physical, psychomotor, and then the affective. So he had 3 taxonomies. But the height of the academic was evaluation. And I think in this world, the most important skill our students are going to need to have is evaluation. For instance, you look at these faces, evaluate, can you determine which one of these are created by AI and which one of these are real faces, real people? And the answer is all of them are AI faces. Every last one of them have been generated by AI. And so the student's ability to be able to evaluate information, what's real, what is the meaning behind it? I think going back to the 1956 Bloom's taxonomy will be the key for those who are going to succeed in the future. Yes, they will need to create. Yes, they will need to evaluate. But they need to do that for their skill set. You would be surprised. It was an article from EdWeek. What do teachers think about ChatGPT? You might be surprised. And it says that 51% of teachers in this survey, it was 1,000 K-12 teachers and 1,000 students, say that they use ChatGPT, with 40% of teachers saying they use it weekly, and 10% reporting that they use it almost every day. So this is something that's growing. Now, how can we use it? You know, one of the most significant benefits of AI is that it can adapt to every student's individual needs and learning styles. It can help students learn in more engaging and interactive ways. It can create personalized quizzes and games tailored to each student's unique interests and preferences. And so I've asked Ms. Our Jen Garris to help us out. I said, I didn't write this. AI wrote this. I asked Ms. Garris to ask ChatGPT how we can use ChatGPT, and this was the response. So I believe it's definitely here. We need to get ahead of it. And how do we do that in our district? Well, I believe we start with why. Always start with why. And our why is the grading, the work that we're asking our students to do. So as Ms. Miller comes to the podium, I just wanted to outline what our why was. And that's our D5 grading philosophy. This directs the work that we do each and every day in the classroom. Sometimes we let the technology drive us. We need to drive the technology. And we drive the technology with our why, with our philosophy. And this philosophy should reflect the practices and technology that we use in our classrooms and the technology that we do not use in our classrooms. So Ms. Miller, if you can kind of give us an update of how we got to this grading philosophy, and then where do we plan to take it to finish?
Absolutely, yes, sir. And without reading the slide to you, I do want to point out the two key pieces within that grading philosophy that we have created thus far. And this is still a draft, as you see on there. So certainly if you have any feedback, we would be interested in that as well. But our intent is for grades to reflect evidence of student proficiency in the learning progression of content standards and skills over time. Those grades should identify clarity, gaps, and deficiencies in learning, and consistently and objectively inform teachers of areas where students need remediation or acceleration. Bottom line, grades is not about what you have earned, it is about what you have learned. And so that is kind of our why. To get here, I'll just remind you that with our last visit with Cognia, they identified some power practices, some opportunities for improvement, and some improvement priorities. And grading was one of those improvement priorities. They wanted us to design and implement consistent grading policies, processes, and procedures across all grade levels and courses that clearly define the common criteria for students' attainment of content knowledge and skills. So in an effort to align with Dr. Ross's philosophy of that vision, mission, and outcomes, we decided to bring focus to the grading by defining our why using stakeholder voices through the creation of a grading philosophy as our first step. So we met with principals, we met with administrators, we met with teachers to begin the drafting process of our grading philosophy. We had several group discussions. Grading, if you know anything about education at all, grading is a complex, it is a personal topic, and there are many facets to that. And so just having a lot of discussions about that, getting people to feel comfortable sharing their beliefs, their discussions, their experiences in that so that we could craft that grading philosophy. We used a couple of questions to help guide those discussions, and that was, what should grading show or demonstrate? What meaning do we want our grades to convey? So after doing that, through all of those discussions, we had a group who put that together into an initial grading philosophy, an initial draft, and we shared that again with those same groups. They gave us more feedback to refine that, and then now we have the draft that we have asked our principals to share with our parents through our SICs, our PTOs, and with their school faculty. During meetings in April and May. So all of our schools should have either done that or be in the process of doing that now. Again, having some questions to guide those discussions, questions like, what is the purpose of grading? How are grades effectively shared with parents? What have you found to be ineffective? What do grades tell you about what your child has learned? And then what do you hope to get from grades? What is it that you're looking for from those grades? This philosophy, our vision, will help guide our mission, our how, and help us progress to our outcomes, our whats. When we talk about instructional technology pieces or any of that, really for our standards, what is it that we're wanting our children to learn? How are they going to demonstrate that? And it's kind of that backwards design process of then what strategies do I use, what tools do I use to most effectively get that learning across to my students? So the finalized grading philosophy will be our focus over the next year for determining what does this look like in practice? What training or professional development, if any, do we need to provide for our teachers, our students, our parents? Where can we align our processes and procedures, either district-wide or by levels? We have started to form our committees, so we have our one district committee that's comprised from our department, academics and administration, which has directors and coordinators, including our special education and our instructional technology personnel in that. And then we're beginning the stages of developing our elementary committees and our secondary committees, which will also be comprised of coordinators, directors, parents, teachers, and students where appropriate. So that is that. And I do want to say thank you to Ms. Tina McCaskill, our Director of Elementary, for being here tonight to support our science students especially. And also in helping us, Ms. Walters, Ms. McCaskill, Dr. Slatton, and Mr. Giuliano have helped with the grading.
Thank
So
you, Ms.
that's
Miller.
where we've been and where we're going.
Well, we certainly appreciate it, and as we move through, it's part of the work that we're doing. I would like to conclude as we talk about our annual report. As always, we have identified 3 challenges for our district: mental health issues, the growth and grade level proficiency, as you see with those red and blue bars, and then addressing the facility needs in our district. But those give us 3 opportunities. I would like to give an opportunity as we look at that first issue. Our first challenge is the mental health issues, and to bring forth our Chief of Student Services and Planning, Dr. Harris, for what we're doing for mental health. Dr. Harris.
Thank you, Dr. Ross, and good evening to all of you and to our members of the general public and those who are watching and listening virtually. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we wanted to bring that to your attention so that you might share in with us as we celebrate, or at least we acknowledge mental health. And looking at all of you, I see, thank you for doing that, for wearing your green ribbons that were made available on tonight in acknowledgement of Mental Health Awareness Month. And of course, we acknowledge this because we all have a vested interest in the well-being and the wellness of our mind, body, and spirit, of not only all of us, but specifically our students. And so I wanted to simply highlight just a couple of things very, very quickly. That is, as we talk about our students, we've learned that in our discovery, more than 17% of our students ages 6 to 17 experience mental health disorders throughout the year. Even in South Carolina, there are, which is one of 6 states that saw an increase in mental health, children's anxiety of more than 50% during the years of 2016 through 2020. That is concerning because the conditions are beginning even at younger years with our younger students, and they are persisting throughout adulthood. So while there are various and sundry ways of addressing mental health through medication, therapy, social support, and education, we know that there's not a one-size-fits-all. So while there are a number of different varying degrees and varying ways in which to address mental health, we wanted to simply acknowledge this and take a moment to acknowledge this on the night. And if you would, I'd like to do 2 things very, very quickly as I conclude this acknowledgement of Mental Health Awareness Month, and that is to say this. First, I want to acknowledge and simply say thank you all for your support of the staff and the support of the resources that have been made available that we may continue to serve our students and our staff here in School District 5 who are dealing with daily anxieties and stressors, particularly probably now with testing going on, probably. And then secondly, we also wanted to do this very, very quickly as well, to have you participate in what I think is a very quick breathing exercise called 4-7-8. 4-7-8. And what that simply does is this: for 4 seconds, we will breathe in very slowly. We will hold for 7 seconds, and then we will release for 8 seconds. And what I will do is when I say breathe, we'll breathe in for 4 seconds, and I will count aloud. I'll say hold, and we will hold for 7 seconds, and I will count aloud. And then when I say release, we'll release very slowly for 8 seconds, and I will again count very aloud. We hope that you, as well as our participants in the audience, and those who are listening and watching virtually, will participate. So if you're ready, let's do that very, very quickly. As I conclude, we're going to breathe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Once again, breathe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Very simple exercise that helps us to reduce anxiety and the stress throughout the day. There are various and sundry exercises that we have shared with our students and our staff. We wanted to share that with you on tonight. So thank you for the opportunity to acknowledge, and thank you for wearing your green ribbons in acknowledgement of Mental Health Awareness Month. Dr. Ross.
Thank you, Dr. Harris, and I really appreciate that exercise. I had to make sure my button was right before I started to hold in. I'm excited about that. You know, it counted faster for me in that, so I really appreciate it. But that, Madam Chair, members of the board, and our community, every day we are writing our story, our D5 story, that we love and grow our students. And that concludes the superintendent's report. We stand for any questions.
Do I have any questions? Ms. Huddle?
Maybe Ms. Miller said it and I just missed it, but I was curious, when do we expect to put the new grading policy, whatever changes result from that, into effect?
Yes, ma'am. So we will continue this the beginning of next year, finalize everything there with all of our groups, do any training that we need to do, and then it will go into effect. Whatever we decide will go into effect during the 24-25 school year.
Anyone else? Mr. Hogan?
Dr. Ross, you brought up ChatGPT, and I mean, for the record, I think it's pretty impressive what that thing can do. I mean, it helps me create bedtime stories almost every night for my daughter. But does the district have any plans just to make sure it's not used in the sense of cheating, plagiarism?
You want to speak to the...
Yes, sir. So as far as the technology goes, Ms. Carol Lunsford and Ms. Susan Applin, who are our coordinators for instructional technology, have been working with schools, with teachers. Our digital integration specialists have been doing that. Really what we're focusing the most on right now, we'll still follow any policies that we have for plagiarism, for anything that deals with that. That's nothing new. It's just a different form of that. But what we're really focusing on right now is the ways to use it in that positive way, so that we are reaching those levels of blooms, both of those levels, analyzing, synthesizing stories, creating what's good, what's not good with that, what would you change, how would you make that better, debating. There are lots of ways that it can be utilized for good. And the state is also in the process of creating the AI standards. So those are open for public review right now on the State Department website.
To piggyback on that, I mean, honestly, I'm not sure how I feel about the ChatGPT in our classrooms. I am very scared that, I'm joking a little bit, that the robots are taking over and we're jeopardizing students' ability to think, and teachers' ability to think as well. So it's a little bit concerning to me. I do want to say, is there any other questions? Because I had a couple. One, I think that our student advisory update shows that we have a very mature student advisory from what they've identified.
That's right.
I would also like to volunteer as tribute to for the caring for pets. I think that was very interesting, that was one of the things that they wanted to learn. I thought that was interesting. But when we talk about the grading philosophy, Ms. Miller, I had a couple of questions. When I read this philosophy, I think that it sounds great, but some of the questions that I immediately pop out, and it may go towards where the planning process is going with the grading policy, is what does that all mean in terms of uniformity in grading and in percentages and clarity and the categories of grading? It seems like Cognia kind of asked those questions, but when you have, one math teacher that has, they give you their syllabus and their format is 25% of your grade is tests and 25% of your grade is quizzes or attendance or homework or whatever. And they're all, the percentage, the categories are weighted equally. If there's only one test and you do poorly on that, but you do well in the rest, it can, the way that it all plays out in the wash, you may not realize, or there may be one grade that impacts your overall grade, and that kind of plays into, how often teachers are updating PowerSchool and whether or not that's a requirement and it's being upheld. Because if you're looking at your child's PowerSchool grade, and you get an interim, and an interim is great, and then you look at, week 7, and your grades look great, and then you get a report card, and grades have been entered from 5 weeks ago, and you didn't realize that, and the student didn't realize that they bombed a test, and it really made a difference what they were doing for that rest of that 9 weeks, their grade is not necessarily adequately, adequately portraying what they've learned. And if they haven't learned it, they may not know that they haven't learned it because you've moved on. And if one math teacher has a grading policy and another math teacher at another school has a different grading policy, and it's on a point schedule, like, I've always preferred, like, in a class you get 2,000 points and you're trying to earn up to those points. My brain works that way, so I always did better in those classes. I don't know why. And that makes it sound silly to people, but how does all of this play into that? And so that's my long-winded one question. And the other question that I have is, how is this affecting the grading scale and the minimum grade? Because I've heard that there are some districts that their minimum grade is a 50, and a teacher can't give a grade lower than a 50. So even if you get a 0, you get a 50, because that's the way the philosophy is. And in my mind, if you get a 0, you don't know the material. If a teacher puts a 50 down, it shows that you kind of know the material, and you're able to get your grade up. So I want to make sure that whatever this philosophy is, I understand the philosophy, that we're not passing students because, if you get a 50 and an 80, you still pass, but do you really know? Because if that 50 was a 0 and you got an extra credit that got you an 80, do you know the material? Does that make sense? I'm sorry if that was very long-winded, but.
It makes a lot of sense, and I would love to have an hour-long discussion with you about all of it. I'll do my best to remember. There were so many good
sorry.
points that you're making and so many things that I wanted us to talk about. But how does this shape our decisions for that? What research says and what we have found in our own experience is, because there are so many individual beliefs about grading, from our own experiences, you just said, points worked for me. That's a personal experience with grading. When you multiply that by the number of teachers we have in this district, there are a lot of personal beliefs. So what we had to do is come to some common ground so that we can refer back to that. Will this answer all of those processes and procedures? No. There's plenty of research on points versus percentages. There are pros and cons to both. But it will help us when things get tense or when our personal beliefs come in there, to focus on what did we say as a group. Everybody had a voice in this, and how do we get to that? We may or may not be able to do a district-wide. There are vast differences in learning from kindergarten to 12th grade. We have no preconceived notions of where we're going. We have plenty of research to share. We have plenty of discussions to hold, and then the community will decide where are we going, with this. So I think that pretty much gives you a nutshell of the first question. And we already have, what we have found is, because Cognia came several years ago, we have already started some of that progress just naturally by having those conversations about when should grades be inputted and what is that process. We do know what research says about the minimum number of grades in any category if you do weights. So sharing some of that information and having some of those standards where we have the clear research that tells us, so that one grade doesn't skew a particular area or category, will be there. So that's the first. For the second one, I think it was pretty much about the 0 and is that lessening things. So that's where, and again, we have no preconceived notions where we're going. We're going to put several things out there, and the community will decide, where we go with that. But the general philosophy in education, when there is the no 0, is that it's not a no 0. It's just a no 0 on a 100-point scale, because it is not an equal scale, an equal rating per grade. So it really doesn't tell you, even that 90 to 100, it tells you that your child got an A, but it doesn't tell you, and how well you know that. But with the 0 to 60 or 0 to 50, there's a wide range. How does that tell you the clarity within the gaps or the deficiencies there? So, colleges who use a 4-point scale or a 6-point scale, those are all equal measures. So we're not talking about equitable right now. We're talking about equal measures for that grading. So even those who have a no zero policy or who have that 50, what they've done, they're not really giving credit for nothing. But that's where that education would come in for parents. This 50 means your child doesn't know that material. That is the lowest that you can go. It's a difficult concept for people to know. It may or may not be the route that we go, but that's kind of the philosophy behind that, an equal scale so that each grade has an equal measure in that versus it's skewed or slanted towards the 100.
Okay, I appreciate that explanation, and I hope that as we move forward and we're having those discussions, the emphasis on how the grades are calculated and what that grading scale is constantly discussed, because the philosophy is very important. And I think that this is a great statement for our district to strive for. Absolutely. But, I also think that the questions about, okay, let's get down to brass tacks, like what does that mean for the grading part of it? I've gotten a lot of questions from people saying, hey, what are y'all talking about a grading policy? Are you changing the way that you grade students? What does that mean? Are we going to a 7-point scale? Or you hear all of these rumors about how things are going. So I think that part of it, we need to kind of address as we go through, because that's important.
We will meet with our parent advisory tomorrow. We have asked our principals to start these conversations with the SICs and PTSOs. The goal right now is to work through that philosophy. So once we nail the why, then we're gonna move to how. And once we bring the hows in, we're gonna talk about a lot of the areas that you pulled up. One of the things, if you look at the South Carolina Uniform Grading Policy, if you have like a 32 in a high school course, a 32 on a 100-point scale, if you withdraw fail, you know what you get? You get a 50. So you according to the UGP, you can earn a 32 on a 100-point scale, but if you withdraw fail, meaning I cut the class, I no longer go, I get a 50 because the scale changes. So we have a lot of education to do on the how side, but I think what what we want to see is, does it tell whatever, like points are very clear, because you can make it, you can make everything weighted, but it should tell proficiency and progression. It should help with remediation and acceleration. And if we can get those two things right, that we all agree on that, then I think the how is going to be better. But if we don't agree on proficiency and progression, and we don't agree on remediation and acceleration, if we can't align on those two, then we're going to really struggle when we get to the how part. So we ask parents, we're in a 2-year cycle with this. Give us input on those 4 items, proficiency and progression, informing us on, does this remediate or progress or accelerate? And if we get those solid, then we're going to start moving into how do we implement this. There may be, and it's just like we said, we don't have any preconceived notions, but you may have an elementary system and you may have a secondary system because of the complexities that we have.
Well, and I mean, it's a little bit different now with elementary. I mean, up until, the 3rd grade,
That's
you don't
right.
actually get real grades.
Right.
Which that's different than when I was in elementary school. So you're not even on that A-B scale until 3rd grade.
That's right.
Which is, it's just interesting how the philosophies have changed. Ms. Huddle, I saw you had your hand up.
I was just going to say, I've heard a lot from parents on this, and primarily ones that are not happy about the minimum 50, and that a 0 stands out to them. A 0 means you didn't do the work at all. And so just kind of wanted, I guess, to pass that along. And I hear we're going to survey, teachers, but I guess, are we going to survey parents as well before we come up with a final plan?
Oh, yeah, so one of the things we've learned from other districts, moving too fast does not work. Our goal is, do our experts agree? We're actually looking at, I mean, when you think about grading, you're going back to the history of grading. We're talking about through the 60s in some of our practices. Bringing everyone up to a new form, points. You know, you have some classes that are AP design and those systems, weighting which projects, what's a minor grade, what's a less grade, how many assessments, where does validity come from in the grading? If I only had 3 this quarter, but I had 12 that quarter. And so our goal right now is we're operating blind because we haven't determined what we're going to actually be assessing. If I take a test and there's 10 questions, I'm just going to give 10% for each question. A famous question, and we used to look at tests, right? And the question is, what color was George Washington's white horse? Is that weighted the same as the 7th question? Write an essay about his impact on. All of that has to be examined. So we want to make the philosophy, the why, be our driver of that how. So once we have this, you'll see next year as we crank up with Cognia, we start out, putting out the how, and that's where you're going to see a lot of these technical pieces come together to form, at minimum, maybe 2 different grading hows or practices. And that's how we're going to use this to drive the technology. Because as you said, if ChatGPT is doing the work, then is that meeting proficiency and progression? Is that telling us remediation or acceleration? So that helps us knock out 2 imperatives: how we assess and how we teach. And then where are the tools that assist our children, and how does ChatGPT and things like that help, AI help assist them in that work? So we're excited to tackle this. We call this the bear in the office because trying to get your arms around it is tough, but this is the direction that we need to reset as a community. And so there'll be a lot of input. We think the best place for that is through your SICs, through your PTSOs. Those reps represent you as parents of those schools. And they're elected, they're from those schools, and then we bring that back up through our parent advisory for larger discussions to come before the board.
Any other? All right. Dr. Ross, thank you very much. Thank you for those questions.